Hi, everyone. It's Karen with AMP Global Youth, and I'm here with our friend and longtime leader and activist, Tahil Sharma. Hello, Tahil. Thanks so much for joining us. Tonight, we're going to talk about the concept of empathy. And for folks who are following us, we are working our way through ideas and mind frames and concepts that underpin global citizenship. We started with hope earlier this year. This month, we're talking about empathy and really tackling the concept, what it means, and thinking about how to make it actionable in our lives. So Tahil was one of the first folks we wanted to speak with about this. He has lots of wisdom from his career as a leader and an activist and a faith leader. So we're just going to jump right in and pick his brain. But remember, you can always find our frequencies on the AMP Global Youth website and using the hashtag frequencies on social media. Tahil, not to throw you in deep too quickly, but how would you define the concept of empathy? What does that mean to you?
Hi, Karen, and hi, everyone who's tuning in. I would define empathy, I think, as a little more than just this idea of knowing what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. We sort of consider this an opportunity to be in a place where even if I don't know what it's like to be in your shoes, I certainly do understand what it means to come from a place of struggle, to come from a place where I have to be at a level of problem solving that puts me in a zone of discomfort. And empathy to me means that I have certain values, a skill set, and an opportunity to put myself in that place of discomfort and actually transform and really help others and uplift them accordingly.
That's great. That's great. I actually overlooked asking you to introduce yourself. Tell us quickly kind of what you do, because you have such a wonderful background that gives you so much wisdom on this concept. Please.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Tahil Sharma. I have been involved with AMP Global Youth since 2000, I would say 14 or 15, Karen, if I'm not mistaken.
It's been about that long. It's been several years, yeah.
Yeah, it's been several years. Currently, I'm involved with the Episcopal Diocese of Los Angeles as an interfaith minister in residence. I serve as a religious director at the University of Southern California, and I'm just an overall interfaith activist doing everything related to interfaith work and making religious and secular pluralism a social and productive norm in society.
That's really nicely said. Yeah, we have a lot to learn from you. Okay, great. So back into this concept of empathy. What challenges do you see around the definition? You know, I can say from our end, we've been thinking a lot about the difference between empathy and sympathy and what it means to presume. And I think you actually have already articulated some really interesting points around maybe not knowing somebody's exact path, but coming from a similar place of struggle. For somebody like me who identifies as a white woman, it would be, you know, when I was a Peace Corps volunteer, I've spent a lot of time in other contexts outside of the one in which I was born. And it's a concept I've struggled with quite a lot, you know, that I can be shocked and shaken and challenged, but that doesn't mean I really know what somebody else is experiencing. Right. So I guess part of what I bring to this conversation is this questioning on, like, how do you make this? Sorry, I have another person here with me. As how do you make this? I don't even know who that was. No, I do that. Multitasking, as many of us are. You know, how you make it something real and look at it appropriately. You know what I mean? Not pretend I'm going to go. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Niger, which was a different language, a different culture, a different religion, everything. And even though I was there for a few years, you know, how much would I ever really understand? And I think there's, for me, it's this ongoing challenge around acknowledging where that gray area is and what my role is in acknowledging it and embracing it and overcoming this assumption that I can fully be in another experience. So I guess I'm sharing a bit of what I've struggled with, but how would you, you know, challenge the definition of empathy for yourself or for all of us or somebody like me?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who happens to be a person of color, and also who happens to come from religious backgrounds that are of minority groups in most parts of the world, I think it's really important to keep in mind that the idea of empathy is to help actually discover the shared values that you might actually have with someone. It's an opportunity to be able to share that, we might approach things in a really different way, but we end up having these values or these understandings that are almost verbatim exactly the same. And I mean, historically speaking, so many different communities have come together and intersected in such beautiful ways that it just sort of inevitably happens. But at the same time, for me, I also have these inherent biases and I also have these inherent privileges, me being a man also, that sort of come with me in the way that I need to remember that my empathy can only go as so far as the person I'm trying to help in the way that it really allows them to be able to get uplifted. I am not there to be someone that supports them in a way that creates sort of a savior complex. I'm basically there to say that if there's an opportunity to use my platform and privilege to help you be in a better, more equal situation, then I am doing my job as an ally.
Yeah, that's so well said. I'm taking notes. That's why I'm looking down, folks. I'm like, I am copying all that Tahil is saying. I think that's right. I think that's a really nice kind of segue into the concept of allyship, which is, I think that's a really big component of it, at least for me, and I know for many, is recognizing your power and privilege and using it to lift others. And so empathy being this actionable awareness that helps you find the commonality. And if you do come with privilege of whatever sort, you're using it to act as ally to the people you're with.
Exactly. And it's really important to recognize that in being in a place like the United States, where we do have so much of a level of diversity, we have a level of pride in the intersections and the inclusivity that we have in the work that we do, we still have very far strides to commit ourselves to. But comparatively to other places around the world, we have the privilege of not experiencing certain injustices, certain levels of injustice that we thought were only in times of history, but not things that we can experience in the now. And for us as Americans across the board, even for the injustices that we face here, we always have an opportunity to learn from others to improve our own condition and their condition. An example of that was of a couple of friends that I took to India with me a couple of years ago, who got to learn what a massive level of poverty looked like, where you have about 400 million people under the line of poverty. And that's not exactly a level of visual experience or a level of cognizance that you can really take hold of, because it's something that you just get immersed into. And you see it as a genuine problem that needs to be fixed. But that doesn't mean you put yourself on a pedestal that says, okay, you don't have that level of a problem, so you don't need to address it. It's like, no, you need to address it at the level that you're at to improve that situation, just as much as you can help anyone else that might be in a worse situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's super interesting. And so I don't mean to diminish the depth and all that you're saying, but you're making me want to ask you, should somebody go abroad or go to a different situation where they see a much different experience, what are some guiding, a few guiding tips or a few guiding ways to approach that situation, like whether it's a few questions or reminders, or if you were to say to somebody who's just, has a bag and they're just about to head out, like, this is just keep this in mind as you experience things different than what you know. What would you give?
A couple of things I would recommend. The first one that I think I just learned over time was expect the unexpected. That's always played a big role. And it's also helped me look at things more objectively than inherently with any form of bias or assumption that I might walk into. For me, going to countries like Japan or Korea, going to Spain or Italy, or even going back to India to see my own family, on many occasions, all of these sort of prejudices or these assumptions come to mind that tell me, oh yeah, people think this way or people will do stuff like this. But sometimes, even if you're learning it outside of a regular cultural or social norm, you might learn or experience something that is completely different. And it's an opportunity to always learn that you are contributing to changing the mold of what you have in your mind on how you see an individual or a community of people. So that for me is always a big thing.
Yeah.
Secondly, the first thing you should always do is what the locals do. For me, as someone who likes to study about culture and religion and trying food and stuff, I actually really don't like going to touristy locations. And obviously, if you have the right people with you, if you have a level of safety and comfort to do so, try to experience the local tastes and sights and sounds that usually people don't get the experience to do. We always like to go to the capital where they have the large historical buildings and the best food that comes out of these fancy restaurants. But the best food actually comes out of the smallest places that you least expect. And you get to see the humility and the hospitality that is natural to those people in places where they get to be in their element. And a lot of the times, metropolitan cities don't allow for that opportunity for people to flourish.
Great. Okay. Now, Tahil, as you have this great faith background in interfaith work and interfaith understanding, tell us a bit about how different faith traditions, if you're able, how they approach the concept of empathy. And with all of the same questions and challenges.
Definitely. So I come from two faith traditions. I come from a Hindu background on my father's side of the family and a Sikh background on my mother's side of the family. They're two different faith traditions that sort of had their impact on how I basically conceive of life, of how I sort of make my decisions. But I think the biggest lesson that I got from both of them is being able to see the divine in all people. There's always this difficulty that we have in recognizing or helping or supporting the stranger that puts us in a place of discomfort. I keep mentioning discomfort because that's how we feel. It's a very big part of human nature and how we don't have this ability to get out of our zones of comfort to do big things. But the fact of the matter is, for me, it becomes a moral obligation to seek out and to share love and kindness to those people that I do not know. And for me, empathy always is basically the guiding principle, the guiding light in my life, because it's, if I don't know someone that happens to be struggling through something, I know there are certain experiences that may never be sort of verbatim the way that they experience something, but it allows me to build a bridge with them through my heart, through my mind, and through my words that allows me to build a relationship and help them improve the circumstances that they're in.
So I'm trying to capture some of the nuggets of what you've said, and I'm hearing this idea that, remember, empathy is not literally, or not that anybody thought it was literally, but it's not really walking in the shoes of, it's trying to find a bridge and a commonality with.
Right.
And it is, as you've said, through heart, through mind, through recognizing an experience you have that may challenge you to attempt to understand what somebody else is feeling, but not to ever presume that you're right in that, in their being, in their space, and really know the complexity of what they're feeling. But it's this idea of more of a bridge, a meeting. That's a really helpful and interesting offering to this conversation.
Yeah, and it's something that Dr. Diane Eck from Harvard Divinity sort of talks about. There's this understanding that diversity is a fact for us in the world. Even if we come from places that may have every person looking almost exactly like each other or having the same kind of life experiences and journeys, there is an inherent diversity that exists between them of different views and opinions. And if we want to develop that into something stronger, the achievement that comes from it is pluralism. It's the idea that there's a dynamic engagement between those differing individuals and communities that allows them to make something possible. And I sort of add to that mindset by actually starting with equality is a given, diversity is a fact, pluralism is an achievement, equity is the goal.
Wow. Okay.
Because it's starting off with sort of us as human beings inherently being equal. We say that over and over again. We say we're one, we say we're together, we get that. But there's stuff that we need to recognize is different among us that makes us unique. We need to understand that there's a dynamic relationship we need to build with one another. And that means we need to further that by making sure that every person in society is allowed to have access, opportunity, and engagement that's equal to everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it comes to resources, whether it comes to rights and privileges, or whether it comes to their capacity to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
All right. Tahil, tell us, just because you mentioned the concept and it's a really interesting moment. How would you define pluralism? Tell us how plural. I mean, I'll let you. I was going to try and summarize it, but let's hear how you do that.
So pluralism to me means that diverse communities do not only have a capacity and are willing to, but actually consistently engage with different communities in